Coming up, he was the biggest circus star of all time, Jumbo the Elephant. And later, the legend of this faithful little dog is famous around the world, Greyfriars Bobby. Step right up. See an animal so big, so colossal, so downright enormous that his name became synonymous with large. In his day, he was a living legend, and he still ranks as the single greatest attraction in American circus history. He was Jumbo.
The word jumbo really didn't exist in the American dictionary, but because he was so unique and because he had that unusual name, the term jumbo became part of our American language. And today we think of it in terms of maybe a jumbo box of detergent or a jumbo size this or a jumbo size that. But it's all traceable to this huge African male elephant that thrilled American audiences in the 1880s.
Back then, Jumbo the Elephant was truly a sensation. Fred Dallinger Jr., Director of Collections and Research at the Circus World Museum in Baraboo, Wisconsin.
America kind of went jumbo crazy. Everybody had to go to the Barnum and London Circus to see this great, big, extraordinary animal that had been so heavily publicized.
Born wild in Kenya in 1861, he was named Jumbo because the animal traders who captured him thought it sounded African. Jumbo was reportedly pretty scrawny when he was first sent to a zoo in Paris. Unimpressed, the French traded him to the London Zoo for a rhino and a couple of anteaters, which in all honesty turned out to be a pretty bad trade. After arriving at the London Zoo, Jumbo the adolescent hit his growth spurt.
And as he became an adult, he really reached the enormous height of about 11 and a half feet, which is exceptionally large for an elephant.
Steve Peters began researching the Jumbo legend after learning his hometown, St. Thomas, Ontario, Canada, plays heavily in Jumbo's story.
The growth that Jumbo enjoyed, it was unprecedented. I don't think anybody had ever witnessed an elephant grow like Jumbo did while he was in London.
Almost as surprising as his size was Jumbo's calm, gentle nature, almost unheard of in an African bull elephant. Unlike smaller Asian elephants, African elephants are rarely used as circus animals. They're considered too wild. Deborah Seabrook of the Elgin County Pioneer Museum, St. Thomas, Ontario.
Jumbo actually gave rides to children and to adults on his back, and that's what most people loved. There's this opportunity in a very structured Victorian society to go to the zoo and to ride the back of this wild beast that was in captivity.
That Jumbo was so tame was most likely due to his relationship with his handler, Matthew Scott.
Jumbo was Matthew Scott's personal project, and they spent hours and hours together. They, at times, were known to live together, sleep together in the same room. Matthew Scott treated Jumbo like his son.
By 1881, Scott's young son weighed over 7 tons. Jumbo was now in that difficult age.
He was starting to develop some peculiar traits. He wasn't as friendly as he was a little more temperamental.
Worried that he would become uncontrollably dangerous, the London Zoo decided to sell Jumbo. This news reached P.T. Barnum. The legendary American showman recognized a good thing when he saw it.
Barnum probably looked at Jumbo as being the exemplary example of the largest thing that ever walked the face of the earth. And that was probably a pretty good reason to acquire him.
Barnum paid what was then an astronomical sum, $10,000. Now the problem was how to transport this massive animal.
It took a number of weeks before they were finally able to persuade and coax Jumbo to first leave the gates of the zoo and then enter onto this specially prepared crate and move him to the docks to travel to the United States.
Back in the United States, Barnum's publicity machine was creating a kind of Jumbo mania. With daily updates on Jumbo's transatlantic journey, the American public ate it up.
The arrival of Jumbo in New York City was probably like the arrival of the king or the queen coming and visiting. There was a huge crowd of people that were gathered at the lower end of Manhattan to welcome Jumbo.
Once ashore, Barnum arranged to have the gigantic crate containing Jumbo towed right up Broadway. But for spectators to see what was inside the crate, well, for that they would have to pay. And pay they did.
He was the principal reason why Americans would go and buy tickets for the greatest show on earth. They wanted to see Jumbo.
The whole performance of the circus built to the climax of the evening, and that climax was the triumphant appearance of Jumbo in one of the rings of the circus.
In posters and flyers, Jumbo's already large stature was even further enhanced.
You see these exaggerated images of him walking down the streets of New York when he arrived in New York, and he's reaching like the third and the fourth levels of townhouses and apartments, which would have been impossible.
But the public never seemed disappointed by this big, though not terribly talented, elephant.
Unlike most of the other elephants that were with the Barnum and London Circus, Jumbo really didn't have to perform. He could simply stand in the menagerie tent where people would gaze upon his great sight.
For 3 years, Jumbo the circus elephant reigned supreme as P.T. Barnum's premier attraction. But one fateful night in 1885, the circus world lost its star. Following a performance in St. Thomas, Ontario, Jumbo and the other elephants were being led down these railroad tracks.
The last two elephants to go towards their cars were Jumbo and a small dwarf elephant who was known as Tom Thumb. Suddenly, from the east, a light appeared. And it was a train coming, and there was no train that had been scheduled. Matthew Scott saw the train coming and tried to hurry Jumbo and Tom Thumb along and get them to run to the end of the boxcars.
But tragically, there was no time. The engine struck Tom Thumb first, injuring him, then plowed straight into Jumbo.
This is the point of impact right here where Jumbo met his death, and the local theory is that this third telephone pole marks the spot where Jumbo was killed.
No one knows for sure exactly what happened that night.
One account says that the train hit Jumbo from behind, forcing him forward onto his knees and forcing, unfortunately, his head towards the tracks. We do know that his tusks were pushed back into his skull. He derailed the engine, and the first two cars knocked them into the embankment. It was a rather enormous collision.
According to numerous eyewitness accounts, as Jumbo lay dying, this intelligent animal used his trunk to draw his friend and handler of 20 years, Matthew Scott, close, as Scott openly wept. Always the businessman, Barnum put his own spin on the disastrous events that night.
Barnum suggested that as the train came in, and once Jumbo realized that he couldn't get out of the way of the train, he couldn't outrun the train, he turned aggressively towards the train to attack it because it was threatening the smaller elephant.
A nice story, but most experts dispute this account. But a good story dies hard. This interview was shot in the 1970s with a reputed eyewitness to the tragedy.
He turned around and he scooped up a lot of stones in his trunk, and he come right at the engine was coming down the grade.
Not surprisingly, Barnum found a way to continue making money off of Jumbo. Jumbo was stuffed and mounted.
In death, Jumbo became a double attraction. People could gaze upon both his mounted hide and also the skeleton.
Although Jumbo's hide was destroyed in a fire, his skeleton has survived and is occasionally on display at the American Museum of Natural History in Manhattan. And Jumbo's legend continues to loom large in the town where he died, thanks to this statue erected in the big guy's honor.
Jumbo is a great tourist draw for St. Thomas. People come from all over the world to see this great monument to Jumbo.
Jumbo was once literally the biggest star in the world. The saying goes that an elephant never forgets. And for the elephant they named Jumbo, neither do his fans.